Hi, this is David at Mash IT. Having recently done a review of both the Alienware M17 R3 and the Area-51m R2, and having them both in the office at the moment, we thought it might be quite nice to do a comparison review between the two laptops, in case anybody is trying to decide between the two of these laptops to buy. So on the left hand side, we have the Alienware M17 R3. This is Dell's slim and light gaming laptop package. The review is going to be in the links below if you want to go and watch the original review of it, if you're not familiar with this laptop. But on the right, we have the Area-51m R2. Now this is Dell's Big Daddy, the heavyweight gaming laptop. This is the laptop that includes a desktop processor that is upgradable. It includes a GPU that you can remove and exchange for another. Also plenty of storage bays, as well as the 2 RAM slots. By contrast, the Alienware M17 R3 being a slim and light laptop, most of this is soldered onto the main board of the laptop. So the processor, the GPU and the RAM and the Wi-Fi card is all soldered on. So when you're buying the slim and light, you need to make sure you buy exactly what you need when you buy this laptop. Whereas with the Alienware 51M, you can buy your laptop and upgrade it at a later date if you wish. So let's make a start. We're going to close them up and we're going to look at the size differences between the two of these laptops. So straight away, you can see the massive differences between these two. Now they both have the same design language, but looking at the difference in the depth, there's quite a stark difference. Not only is the laptop quite a lot deeper, it's also quite a lot chunkier, especially around the hinge area of this laptop. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the port layout and we're going to look at the overall aesthetics of each laptop so you can get a feel for which is which. So I'm going to place one on top of the other. So starting with the left hand side of the laptop, the Area-51m obviously at the bottom, you've noticed you've got a microphone and a headset jack. The slim and light M17, you're only getting a headset jack, which obviously does your headphones and your microphones within one port. Then they both have a USB 3 port, followed by on the Area-51m, you have a Thunderbolt 3 port, and on the M17, you've got a sort of flip down Ethernet port. So let's spin them around. Again, looks very similar on this side. Main difference between the two, the Area-51m gets a full-size SD card slot, whereas the Slim and Light 17, you've only got the micro SD card slot. So this for me is, especially being a video editor, is a big win, having that full-size SD card slot. That does make your life a lot easier. Now we're going to have a quick look at the back. Now we can see on the back, this looks very similar. We've got HDMI 2 ports on both the laptops. Mini display port on both of them. Now on the M17 we've got the Thunderbolt 3 port. This also has power delivery on this laptop. Also please subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications bell. We're doing a video testing the power delivery on these laptops, which will be coming very shortly. In the same area on the Area-51m we've got the full size Ethernet or RJ45 slot. Then moving over we've got the Alienware graphics amplifier port. And then lastly, we've got a single power adapter on the 17, and we've got the double power adapters of the Area-51m, which leads me on to a big difference between the two, and that is obviously the power delivery. The 17 obviously has a single power brick. This mine came with a 330 watt, but it could vary depending on your configuration. The Area-51m, that came with a 330 and 180 watt power brick. And if you want the full power of this laptop, you will need to use both those bricks. I am going to do a dedicated video on the power and the performance on the Area-51m. So again, hit those notification bells and you'll get that within the next week or so. So now that we've looked at the ports, let's have a quick look at the laptops themselves. If we look at the back, you can obviously see how much chunkier the Area-51m is. And I'm going to lift the lids up. Now you can see on both of these laptops, they've both got the Tron ring. They've got the same sort of aesthetics on these laptops. And they've both got the lit Alienware head. But you'll notice you've got a 17, like sort of lightly embossed logo on the Slim and Light M17. And you've got an A51, again, nice slightly embossed on the Area-51m. Honestly, this looks like a much chunkier version. They're so similar other than that. Right, let's get back into the laptops. So firstly, Looking at the power adapters, this is a 330 watt brick we received with both these laptops. It is a quite heavy, chunky brick weighing in at 1.3 kilograms. I know a lot of configurations you'll get a 240, which is a much better size brick to go with the laptop, and I think I've received this one in error on R17, but it is what it is. Now, when you get the Area-51, not only do you get this 1.3 kilogram brick, you also get a 240 watt brick as well. So you need to carry both of these bricks around with you. Now I'm going to drop the sizes of the laptops here on the screen now, but bear in mind, if you're buying these laptops, bag-wise, this will fit in most 17-inch laptop bags. The Area-51m, you're realistically looking at an 18-inch laptop bag. I'll try and find some links and drop them down in the descriptions below, just in case you're not sure what you're looking for each of these laptops. Weight-wise, the Alienware M17 weighs 2.8 kilograms, so quite a normal sort of weight for a 17-inch laptop. Add an extra 1.3 kilogram for the power brick. It's quite a heavy package to be carrying around with you in a bag. The Area-51m on its own weighs 4.3 kilograms, and with both of these bricks, you're talking another 2.1 kilograms. So in total, you're talking 6.4 kilograms in weight you're going to be carrying around with this laptop. So this really isn't a laptop you can be lugging around everywhere with you. It's fine if you're going to be carrying it from room to room or to a friend's house for a LAN gaming session, but it isn't the sort of thing you'd be carrying to and from the library and to and from classes unless you want a serious workout. So if portability is the sort of the key feature that you're buying for a gaming laptop, then clearly you're going to probably be looking at the M17. Now that we're onto the laptops themselves and we've got the decks open, first thing you'll notice, especially if you're familiar with the Area-51m from last year, they've now changed the keyboard on the R2. The keyboard is the same as the M17 R3. So by that I mean you've got the nice tactile chiclet keyboard with a dedicated number key and macro keys up at the top here. It's a really, really lovely keyboard, and of all the gaming laptops I've used, this keyboard is by far my favourite of all the actual laptop keyboards out there. Trackpads wise, the M17 comes with a Microsoft Precision's trackpad. It's quite large and it's got inbuilt clicks in here, so you click on the actual pad itself to activate it. In comparison to the Area-51m, you're getting a much smaller trackpad with dedicated click buttons, and it's a Synaptics trackpad, and the reason for that is this one lights up. So as you touch it, you'll notice the actual trackpad itself is an RGB trackpad, and you can change that in Alienware Command Center, and you've got a number of different options for that. So if you want the RGB trackpad, you've got to go for the Area-51m. The better trackpad of the two, I would have to say, is probably the M17 R3 from my use between the two, unless you really like having the dedicated click buttons. These are pretty good buttons as well because they're a nice and soft responsive click, not a horrible loud clicky noise. Also, you've got a slightly longer grill area on the M17 R3. This is much shorter on the Area-51m R2, but they have got the same sort of hexagonal design across the two. The power button is on the right on the M17 and on the middle in the Area-51m R2. The screens, they are offering the same sort of options between these two laptops. So you've got a choice of between 144 Hz, 300 Hz. I think there's a 360 Hz panel. I'm sure there'll be the new options coming in 2021. I know there's some 1440p panels on the way. Both of these are great screens. These are both the 144 Hz options. And my choice when buying any of these laptops is go for the 144 Hz. The great advantage of the M17 R3 is if you buy the 144 Hz, you get G-Sync, but you can also press Function F7 and switch to Optimus, so you get slightly longer battery life by doing so. The Area-51m is more like a mobile UPS, so that's not even worth worrying about. This is terrible battery life regardless. But if you switch the M17 to the Optimus mode, you will likely get about 4.5 hours of light use with the laptop. So again, it's not like an Ultrabook, but for a gaming laptop, that's actually not bad. So what we're going to do now is we're going to quickly look at the performance between these two laptops, and I'll just quickly explain what we've got with these configurations. Neither of these are the highest end options available. These are both quite mid-range for their respective laptops. With the M17 R3, we're looking at a 10th generation 10750H 6-core processor with 12 threads and the 2070 Super from NVIDIA for the graphics card. On the Area-51m, we've got a desktop chip, and in this one I've chosen the 10700, which is an 8-core 16-thread processor. And the reason I chose this is obviously, and the same with the 6 core on the M17, is because I find if you choose the highest end processor you can put in the laptops scream. You know, the fans really have to work hard to keep them cool. I always find whenever I buy an Alienware, I'll never buy the absolute top end. So by buying the 10700, you get an amazing performance, but the laptop doesn't scream when you're actually, you're using it full pout. And for the GPU, I'm using the 2070 Super again from NVIDIA. And the one thing that's disappointed me from our review, if you've watched that, the 2070 Super on this laptop, it's only 115 watts. Obviously that is quite a normal spec for a laptop. The M17 R3 is also 115 watts, so the actual GPU performance between the two is exactly the same. But when you're buying such a powerhouse, a bulky machine like this, I expect it to be at least 150 watts. But if you buy the 2080 or 2080 Super, they put a much bigger thermal budget on it. So if you are looking to getting the ultimate performance out of this, then I would recommend upgrading to at least the 2080. For me personally, a 2070 Super, even 115 watts, is more than adequate for what I need. And the good thing about that is this laptop runs incredibly quiet, and we will look at decibel meter readings between the two as we go. So let's switch into some CPU benchmarks so we can show you the difference between a mobile CPU and a desktop CPU in these laptops. Okay, let's look at the performance between these two machines, because this is probably the main reason that you could be choosing one over the other if it isn't portability. So to start with, the M17, it is using a mobile 45 watt CPU, whereas the Area-51m is using a desktop processor and is pretty much unlimited with the wattage it can pull from that processor. And the desktop processor in this model is the Intel 10th generation 10700. So first benchmark we ran on both these machines was Cinebench. The M17 scored 3,106 points, whereas the Area-51m scored 4,765 points. So you can see here straight away where the desktop class processor absolutely destroys the M17's 45 watt CPU. This is obviously because it's such a chunky machine, it can really, push the wattage with no problem at all. Both of these machines do have vapor chambers, and we will be looking inside them in a minute. Next we ran the Geekbench CPU. The M17 scored 1,212 on the single core and 6,069 on the multi-core. The Area-51m scored 1,302 on the single and 8,970 on the multi-core. So again, some really good figures. Now when we hop over and look at the GPU between these two, they are both 115 watt NVIDIA 2070 Supers, so they are pretty much identical. And as I said earlier on, this is a bit of a shame for me. I would have expected a better performance from the Area-51m. It will run cooler, but other than that, they're exactly the same scores. So I ran Time Spy on both of these. The M17 got a graphics score of 8,571, whereas the Area-51 got 8,615, so an absolute nominal amount of difference there. Now when we're looking at the Firestrike graphics score, the M17 got 22,052 points, whereas the Area-51m scored 22,056 points. So really is absolutely a wash with regards to the GPU performance with these graphics cards. If you get the 2080, that's when I think you're going to see a bigger difference, because obviously the Area-51 allows a much higher wattage budget for that GPU, and I don't understand why Dell don't allow it for the 2070 Super as well, but there we go. But that brings us neatly onto the fans. Now I have got the decibel meter readings in both of these original reviews, which as I say I've linked down below in the comments section, but obviously the Area-51m has much bigger fans pumping out that hot air at the back. Now that does two things. One, it obviously keeps the temperatures down on the internal components, so it does run cooler, especially on the GPU, than the M17. But more importantly, and particularly in my case, it has a much more pleasant sound. The M17, being thinner and having thinner fans, is quite a lot louder with a different pitch to the fans. The Area-51m has got just a nice whoosh to the fans. So if you're using these and you're gaming them for a couple of hours, the Area-51m is a much nicer experience. Unless, of course, you've got some sort of closed headset on, you can't hear the fan noise anyway. It would just probably bother the people around you. Right, so let's go and take a look inside these machines and actually have a look at these fans and the other components that you can upgrade on them. Okay, so we're going to have a quick look inside both of these laptops. They're both very easy to open up. So you can see it's just ordinary Phillips head screws all the way around. Once you've undone the sort of captive screws at the front, You just pry it up from the front and lift it straight off. Same again with the Area-51m. Let's take a look inside. So we're going to start quickly with the M17. You can see straight away quite a large area here, which is obviously the vapor chamber cooling on the new models. Decent sized fans, but everything's very difficult to get to. The motherboard is flipped, so if you want to repaste or anything, you do have to take the entire motherboard out to do that. Now, as I was saying earlier on, the only upgradable parts on this laptop, the original SSD, you can switch that for a new one. You've got another M.2 PCIe 2280, and then lastly, over on this side, we've got a 2230, so you can put a 30mm SSD, so they're usually in smaller capacities, but there is that option. Often Dell send them out at the moment with 30mm SSDs with an adapter plate, so what you can potentially do is remove this plate, pop it straight in the 2230, and then you've freed up both your 80mm bays for decent SSDs. And that's all there is to really see with this one. Obviously we can see we've got an 86 watt hour battery. This is changeable, it's not stuck in like on Apple laptops, that's one good thing. And then you've got your downward firing speakers and some forward firing speakers, that's why they've got pretty good sound. Moving over to the big boy, instantly you can see why that you can fit in decent GPUs and desktop CPUs. Looking at the thickness of these two fans, I mean that's about an inch higher than the M17, so you've got much deeper fans in this chamber pushing that air out the back, which is why they run a lot quieter and why they can pump out a lot more heat, so you've got desktop CPUs and much bigger GPUs in these machines. Now you can see it's quite difficult to take these apart, there's a lot to take out, but they're well labelled. Every screw tells you what the screw is on the actual screw socket, which is handy in case you lose one. And there's a good guide on Dell's website so that you can actually take all of this out and remove the CPU or replace the CPU or GPU. The two RAM slots obviously not soldered on, so you can replace those. And it can go up to 3200 if you put the right RAM in. I think it's HyperX RAM can go up to 3200. You need to check on Dell's website for that. They come with 2933 out of the gate with Dell, unless you upgrade it. The Wi-Fi card, we've got a killer card in the Wi-Fi, again you can change that. You've got your first 80mm M.2 PCIe slot here, this is populated. The second one is running this way across the board. If you can't find it, you slot it in underneath, it actually does tell you here that it is a SSD slot. And then lastly, we've got a 2.5 inch bay over on the right. Now the good thing is, even if you don't have the hard drive from Dell, they provide the brackets and the cable so you can add your own. That is good, because in the past certain manufacturers haven't done that. And then with regards to the battery, it's a 90 watt. Now although the battery is bigger than the M17 R3, because of the components used in this, the battery life is terrible on the Area-51m, but if you have the G-Sync and Optimus version of the M17, you do get much longer battery life, as I said earlier on, a good 4.5 hours. So, quite a pro if you are looking between the two, as well as the mobility, is the extra battery life with the M17 over the Area-51m. I think that's really all there is to say on them. Right, so I just want to do a quick speaker test. So it's an absolutely non-scientific test. I've got the same track on both. Their speakers are both set to 60%. So let's see how they sound. Here is the M17 R3 speakers. And now the 51M. I mean, there's no contest there really. They are both good speakers, but the 51M destroys the 17 with regards to the fullness of sound and the depth of sound. It's a much nicer speaker system on the laptop. Obviously, if you're going to be doing some serious listening to music, you probably will use a set of speakers or a decent headset. But if you are using the laptop speakers, the 51Ms are definitely a cut above the 17s. Okay, so to conclude, I've used both these laptops now for a good couple of weeks. I do love both these laptops. I've always been a big Alienware fan, and I love the aesthetic on both of these machines. I'm going to just say it outright and just say if I was going to choose one, I would choose the Area-51m every time. It is incredibly bulky. It does need 2 power bricks, and you need to take that into consideration. But with regards to the build quality, the upgradability, the speakers, it absolutely annihilates the M17. Now you do pay for that, as I say, with the weight and the size of the laptop. You're going to need to buy a big bag if you're going to be carrying it around, and it is quite a lot more expensive than the M17. So you can upgrade all of the components within this generation. Obviously you can't guarantee you're going to put a newer generation CPU in because Intel regularly changes sockets, and Dell won't guarantee that you can put in the next range of graphics cards. So when the 3000 series launch, you can't guarantee you can be able to use a 3000 series. But still, if you've got a 2070 Super but you want to upgrade to a 2080 or a 2080 Super, you can. If your graphics card fails, you can replace it. You're not binning the entire motherboard. And you can, as I say, upgrade that CPU within the same generation. To me, this is definitely my favourite machine. Now that's not to say that the M17 isn't a fantastic machine. Pros of this machine is it is much sleeker. Considering these are both 17-inch laptop, if you looked at them together, you'd think one was an 18-inch and one was a 17-inch. They're both a 17-inch screen laptop, but the M17 is a much thinner and also more compact version of this Alienware design. It will fit in 17-inch laptop bags. It's much lighter, so you can easily pick it up and throw it around, whereas the Alienware, you're lugging it around. Also, you're only carrying one power brick. But as I've said, with this model, there is a lot soldered on to the main board. So your RAM is soldered, your Wi-Fi card is soldered, obviously your CPU and your GPU are soldered. So if you're buying the M17, the only thing I'd say to you is make sure 100% you're getting the specification that you want when you buy it, because you cannot change it. The only thing you can change, as when we looked inside these laptops, is you can add an extra 2 SSDs and switch out your original SSD. Nothing else can be changed. Well, I hope this has been useful. If you've got any comments or any questions, please leave them down below and I'll do my best to get back to you and answer you. And tell me your thoughts. Which one do you prefer out of these two? Because we're all different, and what I love, the next person's going to hate. So please let me know what you prefer. Also, like and subscribe if you can, and hit the notifications bell because we will have more content coming for all of the Alienware range, because we are major Alienware fans over here, as well as there's plenty of other laptops we've got coming into the office soon. Thank you for watching.